Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest developments here in Israel throughout the region, with chief focus, of course, today on the Lebanese file, implications for Israel, the various dangers of spillover to adjacent countries, including some of the other fronts, of course, the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's always important to remember, however, how the war began. 427 days ago, on October 7th of last year, the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates in the Gaza Strip have launched a direct attack on southern Israel, declaring war by perpetrating a massacre, murdering some 1,200 mostly civilians, wounding over 4,800 others, and kidnapping some 250 people, including elderly, men, women, children, and infants. 100 of them remain in Hamas captivity to date. On October 8th of last year, the subsequent day, Iran essentially joined the war when it greenlighted its proxy initially in Lebanon to launch cross-border attacks against Israel. Since then, Hezbollah was joined by additional Iranian proxies from Syria, from Yemen, from Iraq, including Iran proper, all of whom have launched direct attacks against Israel. Let's now turn to our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, what can you update us on the latest, if you will focus initially on the Syrian front?
Well, you remember the old domino theory of the 1950s, the American fear that if a certain nation, either in Western Europe or in Southeast Asia, falls to communism, its neighbors in short order will also follow. Now, this apparently is what is happening in Syria in about a week's span. And as you mentioned, the surprise onslaught by Hamas, so is the surprise onslaught by these rebels in Syria, which now seems to have upended the entire Middle East apple cart. Now, the Israeli Defense Forces only earlier this afternoon announced that following a review of the rapidly changing situation in Syria, Israel's Northern Command has raised its readiness level both in the air as well as in the ground. It means that the Israeli Air Force is on high alert, patrolling, ready to intervene if hostile forces get too close to the Golan Heights border, as well as ground units, again, on alert to block any attempt by such forces to infiltrate Israel. Now, remember, Damascus, the Syrian capital, is only some 40 kilometers from this border. This is one column ride in less than an hour. So it's very fluid. And while there was a sort of an academic discussion in Israel, who is better or who is not as worse for Israel among the warring parties, obviously, if it gets too close for comfort to Israel proper, then the Syrian front, which was secondary up to now, will become the central one, especially now that the ceasefire in Lebanon seems to hold.
Indeed. Well, the Iranians should heed Israel's warnings. If they miscalculate, it will cost them not only Hezbollah and the Islamist Hamas, but also many of its proxies that are currently flooding Syria. Well, let's turn elsewhere in central Israel, where we're joined by Brigadier General in Reserve Yaron Rosen, formerly the IDF Chief of Cyber Staff and Israel Air Force Commander, as well as a fighter pilot. It's great to see you, General Rosen. I'd like to immediately ask you also to expand on the Syrian front. Obviously, there are different calculations when we're talking about the current rapid advance by the Turkish-backed forces. How does Israel intend to continue to operate within this very delicate sphere to ensure and guarantee, as was released by the Prime Minister's office, that Israel will prevent any transfer of significant munitions either to Hezbollah or to the Assad regime.
Yes, I think that Israel needs to closely monitor what's going on in Syria. This might be, well, this is part of the unraveling of the Iranian tentacles. And the Turks were very smart in the sense that they were waiting for this very quick decay of the Iranian tentacles, namely in Lebanon. So now Lebanon is sort of put aside for a second, and they were eyeing the northern Syrian front for a long time, arming and training the rebel forces. And now, best timing, because the Syrian forces are without Hezbollah fighters, which were a main force helping them during the last 15 years or so. And now it's their time to move forward very, very fast. And if they move all the way to Damascus, this means that basically Syria is falling apart. Syria's collapse creates both risks and opportunity, and Israel will face growing threats on multiple fronts. The reorganization of Hezbollah, however it will in Lebanon, will the tentacles sort of pull back from Syria into Iraq and wait for, rearming, regrouping sort of move? And Turkey, if they go all the way to Damascus, basically we will see cantonized Syria. Now, if that happens, basically everything achieved after the Yom Kippur War quite a while ago must be reorganized vis-a-vis Israel's security. So Israel should be very concerned about a power vacuum in the Golan Heights. And I think that something in the sense of a defend forward strategy should be built. Namely, if Israel sees the rebel forces entering Syria, it might need to secure itself by moving forward in the Golan Heights to create a DMZ on the Syrian side, because the Syrian army will pull back into Damascus to protect the capital, to protect the regime. And that will create a chaos in the Syrian side, Golan Heights. And that is something that Israel needs to really take advantage of, in a sense, and stabilize with whoever will take control over the relevant area. Also, collaborate there with Jordanians, with the Druze in the south of the Golan, in order to create a new arrangement, power arrangement of the whole Golan Height area to secure Israeli border on that side.
Thank you, General Zen. Also joining our conversation is Israeli commander of the Air Force Task Force for Missile and Air Defense, namely Brigadier General in Reserve, Doron Gavish. Good to see you, General. I'd like to hear your take on this, also from a defensive perspective, namely in collaboration with Central Command. What is being done in order to ensure the security not only of Israel, but General Zen mentioned Jordan, a U.S. partner, in peace with Israel, additional countries in the region that may also have significant implications of this development.
Well, Jonathan, first and before anything else, Israel, mainly the defense forces of Israel, are looking at the Israeli interests and are looking on the security of the Israeli civilians. And of course, we were very concerned with the situation in the Lebanese border, and we are there for a while, almost than a year of fighting. And the Golan Heights, this is something that was a bit, we could say that not a bit, even it was stabilized. And then now once the situation is changed, and as both of my colleagues discussed, of course, from the Israeli point of view, for sure, in the short range, this could be dangerous. It could be dangerous because it could be all kind of different organizations that could take an advantage of the Syrian army that is not there, and of course, for any reasons that could decide that they want to open any front against the Israelis. I don't think that this is now their aim, but once there are so many interests, so many groups, so many subgroups, of course, the Hezbollah who is in this area, we have to be first making sure, we have to make sure for first thing is the security of Israel. So this is why of course, the Northern Command is alert, is even higher now, and also in this area. Jordan is a player, is in peace with Israel, as we all know, and the stabilized Jordan is a very high interest of Israel and also of the region. So as it is a challenge to the security of Israel, of course, this is also a challenge for the security of Jordan. And when it comes to CENTCOM, I won't speak on behalf of CENTCOM, but I'm sure that from the CENTCOM point of view, stabilizing the area with the powers which are Western oriented, this is one of the main interests. So I think that, it's very early, although things are happening very rapidly, to see what exactly would happen there, but we have to prepare ourselves for the worst, with risk from one side and opportunities from the other side. But again, the first thing is to make sure that we are keeping the security of the Israelis living in the Golan Heights.
Well, U.S. Central Command is operating in Syria for the defeat of ISIS as part of Operation Inherent Resolve. It has no stake nor orders under the directives of the White House to contend with anything related to the current developments in northwestern Syria, and the Pentagon also highlights that it continues to defend its forces in force protection against any attempt to harm either the civilian, the service members or partners and the installations themselves. Mr. Olin, before we move to the next topic, I would like to touch briefly on Iraq, since we heard Iraqi Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani come out and declare his intention to stand by the Damascus regime of President Bashar al-Assad, claiming, even going as far as saying that the Iraqi military will go. I had some conversations with people surrounding him, and as well as people in Washington about this matter, and they said that it's a lot of hot air, since Iraq will always find an opportunity to climb down that tree at the first given moment. But nonetheless, we do see a number of proxies, be they Hashd al-Shaabi, Iranian proxies, deployed along the border of Jordan, as well as along the Deir Azul governorate, the border there, namely in the Al Bukamal crossing, threatening not only to enter into Syria to join the war, but also launching a couple of projectiles in recent days towards U.S. installations.
Well, Syria and Iran had originally started their alliance because Iraq was their common enemy. Even before the revolution, even under the Shah, Iran saw Iraq as its most threatening neighbor, and so did Syria, even those Damascus and Baghdad had Ba'ath regimes, rival factions of the same party. Now, Iraq today is really an Iranian vassal state, except for the American presence. which is not going to stay there for long. And therefore, the American interest in the stability of the Sudani government is not what it was until last year. However, one should not expect even the fall of Damascus to end this phase of the Syrian war, because the Russians presumably will whisk Bashar Assad, his family, and his associates out of Khmeimim air base to Russia. They will set up a government in exile, and they will plot his return to Syria. There will be a counteroffensive by the regime, helped by the Russians, at some time not too far in the future. So the euphoria, which will probably flow from the fall of Damascus, will be unnecessary, and we will see more and more of this campaign. And by the way, surely there will be voices in Israel saying, why not us? Let us get to Damascus before others. What to do there, will we stay there, is something else. But maybe Israel should establish some presence on the ground in Damascus before the others do.
I don't know how to respond to that other than to say no. But that is, of course, a school of thought that I would pursue.
I'm anticipating what is happening in the Israeli government now that there are so many original voices there.
Yeah, well, I highly doubt that Israel would enter Damascus. It would a lot sooner destroy Damascus before entering there as a conqueror. But nonetheless, General Rosen, I'd like to hear your take on the Lebanese file. Hezbollah just secured a defeat after thinking it would be victorious for a better part of the year. It doesn't really have much to give the Assad regime at this point in time in trying to salvage him. And the fact that it decided, with the blessing of the Iranians on October 8th, to join the war against Israel was its worst calculation to date.
Yeah, I think there are quite a few stabilizing forces here and a lot of destabilizing forces. After what happened in Lebanon, instigated by the war that was started by the Iranians vis-a-vis Hezbollah on Israel on October 8th, as we mentioned every program here, it is now pay time. And there are opportunities here for long-term stability, actually long-term stability. And if you look at it from a very, very high level, I think and that's what we should do right now, because many things will happen on the lower tactical level. And for sure, a lot of people are going to die. That's the one thing that I can say with high probability. I think the first thing is, because all eyes will be on Syria, this is actually a very good opportunity for Lebanon. A very good opportunity for Lebanon. And the reason this is because Lebanon now can literally cut off from its Iranian Syrian influence decades into a new era. And that is what Israel and the US should be working on right now. I would actually encourage them to move towards even a peace process between Israel and Lebanon before Israel and the Saudis. The Saudis also have interest in this. They poured a lot of money into Lebanon as well. So this is something that might be for Israel, because all eyes are now on Syria, and that chaos will take quite a while to play for itself. It should focus on stabilizing Lebanon and defend forward in the Golan Heights, the trigger being the rebel forces getting to Damascus. That's the only thing that Israel should do. okay, and collaborate, while doing that, collaborate with CENTCOM and the Jordanians. That's how this should play out. And that is everything we need right now because we have enough of our problems. And just to remind everyone, we still have some other problems to deal with, which is Gaza and the West Bank. And this is also because, again, all eyes will be on collapsing Syria. This is a window of opportunity to advance some of the very needed advancements in Gaza and the West Bank. And maybe the last thing I want to say is from a high level, Turkey is a NATO member. We're talking about a NATO member that will be virtually on our border. Okay. Now, it can be good and it can be dangerous. We need to turn it to something good. And this is where the US needs to work. The problem is we are still in the interim between the presidencies, and the Middle East does not wait for the president. The Middle East is moving forward very, very fast.
No. Well, the fact of the matter is a NATO member is conquering Syria, which is more dramatic than just being on our border. But General Gavish, we don't have very much time left, and I'd still like to ask you, since there is one player that has not been very vocal. It's still vocal in the maritime sphere, but not necessarily in the scheme against Israel and the United States at large. The Houthis, they continue to bother Israel with long-range ballistic missiles as well as other munitions. They continue to disrupt maritime shipping in the Red Sea and the strategic Strait of Bab el-Mandeb and adjacent waterways. But they have been relatively quiet about everything happening in Syria and in Iraq and all the evolution of that. Should Israel potentially utilize this opportunity to deal with them once and for all?
Well, Jonathan, the Houthis are only one of the other seven arenas that Israel have. So I think that for sure the coming administration, as well as Israel, as well as the coalition, must look at the Houthis. But I believe that looking at the Houthis should be part of really looking on the Iranians. We've talked about the challenges for Israel. So there is the security challenge, and we discussed it quite enough. I would say two things relevant to it. First of all, just a reminder that Israel still have his two main goals related to the ceasefire in Lebanon, and this is containing the Hezbollah ability to be rearmed, and this is going to be a focus of Israel in Syria, because we know that both them and the Iranians would like to take advantage of the situation. This is something that Israel would be very much in focus in order to make sure that it is not happening. Going back to the south, the Houthis, as being one of the Iranian proxies, we might find them also part of what is happening in Syria. We are not sure, but from a direct Israeli interest and the U.S. interest, we talked more than one about the higher strategy when it comes to dealing with rockets, missiles, UAVs, and all kinds of other projectiles that are being shot toward you. The first one is what we call attack operations, in order to dismantle as much as you can of those capabilities while they're still in the ground. The other one, alert, then active defense and passive defense. Let's put it the pillar of doing some attack operations within the Houthis, and if we're looking at the coalition and also Israel, it is not yet in a point that we could say that we fully took care of it, and this is something, of course, that we would need to discuss and to see what would be the best way of doing it, regardless of what is happening in Syria, because again, this is a direct hit a threat toward Israel. And I can't finish without going back to the Iranians, and they really should be the focus as I started. And all what is happening in Syria, I hope that it won't divert the Western world and all of us, our intention toward there. This is also an interest of the Iranians, that they would like the world, us, CENTCOM, and everyone to be concentrated in some other places, and they would continue with their plans. And really, the last thing that I would say is that from the Israeli interest, we always have to remind everyone, you do it every opening of this war update, and this is that the hostages are still in Gaza. The goals of our war, which regards to it, is still not fully achieved. And this is another focus from the Israeli point of view, to bring back the hostages. There are efforts being done by the government, by the military, and by others, and I hope that we would be able to do it very, very soon, because time is really running against those people which are under the ground in the Gaza Strip.
Thank you, General Gavish. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today. I'd like to immediately thank General Rosen, General Gavish, and Mr. Oren for all of your insights. I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem, wishing you a Shabbat Shalom. The Middle East, home to the cradle of civilization, retains a reputation from time immemorial as one of the most complex, conflict-ridden regions of the world. A cluster of nations, religions, powers, and influences, Mideast intricacies pose conundrums to even the most astute individuals. Bombarded daily, indeed every minute, by a barrage of information, some accurate, yet most of it less so, TV7 Israel invites you to watch and hear some of the most knowledgeable experts, most of whom partook in creating policies shaping this region today. Join us for Jerusalem Studio every Tuesdays and Fridays for content that truly matters. For more of TV7's productions and editorials, we invite you to visit our website at TV7israelnews.com.